My husband left me alone at our anniversary dinner while I'm 7 months pregnant because his ex-girlfriend's cancer returned and she has no one else to support her. When I said, "What about your wife and unborn child?" he replied, "She's dying, you're not." I paid the check and drove myself home to pack his bags with a note, "Hope she was worth it." I 29F am currently 32 weeks pregnant with my first child and honestly questioning everything about my marriage right now. My husband Jake 31M, and I have been together for 4 years, married for 2. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never thought I'd be dealing with something like this while carrying his baby. Jake has this ex-girlfriend named Melissa who he dated for 3 years in college. They broke up about 6 months before we met, and from what Jake told me, it was a mutual decision because they were growing in different directions. Melissa moved across the country for grad school, and Jake stayed here to start his career. When Jake and I started dating, he was completely honest about his relationship history, which I appreciated. The issue with Melissa started about 2 years ago when she was diagnosed with breast cancer at 28. It was shocking news, and Jake was genuinely concerned when he heard about it through mutual friends. At the time, I thought his reaction was sweet and showed what a caring person he was. He sent her a thoughtful message expressing his sympathy and offering support if she needed anything. What I didn't expect was for that support to become an ongoing emotional relationship. Over the past 2 years, Jake has been in regular contact with Melissa about her treatment, her recovery, her emotional state, and basically every aspect of her cancer journey. He gets updates on her test results, celebrates when she has good news, and provides comfort when she's struggling. At first, I tried to be understanding. Cancer is scary and devastating, especially when you're young. If Jake could provide some emotional support to someone going through such a difficult time, that seemed like a good thing. But as time went on, I started feeling uncomfortable with how involved he was in her life. Jake would spend hours on the phone with Melissa, sometimes late at night when she was having trouble sleeping due to treatment side effects. He would research clinical trials and treatment options to send her. When she was feeling depressed, he would send care packages with her favorite snacks and comfort items. He even took a day off work to drive 6 hours to attend one of her chemotherapy sessions because she was feeling alone and scared. Every time I tried to express concern about the level of involvement, Jake would shut me down by saying things like, "She's going through cancer, Sarah. How can you be jealous of someone who's fighting for her life?" Or, "I'm just being a decent human being. Would you rather I abandon someone who needs help?" The guilt tripping was incredibly effective. How do you argue with someone who's framing basic empathy as supporting a cancer patient? I started questioning whether I was being selfish or unreasonable for feeling uncomfortable with my husband's emotional investment in his ex-girlfriend's medical crisis. But the boundaries kept shifting. Jake started visiting Melissa every few months, always with good reasons. She needed help moving to a new apartment closer to her treatment center, she was having a particularly rough week and needed moral support, she was celebrating hitting a treatment milestone and wanted to share the good news with people who understood her journey. These visits would last entire weekends, and Jake would come home emotionally drained and distant. He would spend the first day back catching up on messages from Melissa and processing whatever they had discussed during his visit. I felt like I was competing with her cancer for my husband's emotional attention. When I got pregnant 8 months ago, I hoped things would change. I thought Jake would naturally start focusing more on our growing family and less on his ex-girlfriend's medical drama. Instead, the opposite happened. Jake became even more protective of his relationship with Melissa, saying things like, "She needs stability and support right now, and I can't just abandon her because we're having a baby." The situation came to a head last Friday, which was our second wedding anniversary. We had made reservations at the restaurant where we had our first date, and I was looking forward to a romantic evening celebrating our marriage and talking about our excitement for the baby. I spent the afternoon getting ready, even though I'm huge and uncomfortable at 32 weeks pregnant. I bought a new maternity dress that actually made me feel pretty, did my hair and makeup, and was genuinely excited for our evening together. Jake seemed excited too, bringing me flowers when he got home from work and telling me how beautiful I looked. We got to the restaurant right on time for our 7 p.m. reservation. The hostess seated us at a lovely table by the window, and we ordered a bottle of sparkling cider to celebrate since I can't drink alcohol. We were looking at the menu and talking about baby names when Jake's phone started buzzing. He glanced at it and his face immediately changed. "It's Melissa," he said, looking worried. "Let me just see what's going on." He answered the phone right there at the table, which already annoyed me since we were supposed to be having a romantic dinner. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line, though I couldn't make out the words. Jake's face went pale as he listened. After a few minutes, he said, "Okay, I understand. Let me figure out what I can do. I'll call you back in a few minutes." He hung up and looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, like he was about to deliver devastating news. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. Melissa just got her latest test results. The cancer is back and it's spread to her liver. She's completely falling apart and she doesn't have anyone else who understands what she's been through. My heart sank, both for Melissa's health and for what I knew was coming next. That's terrible news, I said carefully. I'm sure this is really scary for her. She's asking if I can come tonight. She says she can't handle being alone with this news and her family doesn't really understand the medical side of things like I do. I stared at him. Jake, it's our anniversary. We're literally sitting at our anniversary dinner. I know, and I feel horrible about the timing. But Sarah, she's dying. This could be really bad. So you want to leave our anniversary dinner to drive 6 hours to comfort your ex-girlfriend? It's not about her being my ex-girlfriend. It's about her being someone I care about who just received devastating news and has no one else to turn to. I looked around the restaurant at all the other couples enjoying their evening together, then back at my husband who was clearly already mentally preparing to leave. What about your wife and unborn child? I asked. Don't we count as people you care about who might need your support? Jake's response will probably haunt me forever. She's dying, Sarah. You're not. The casual way he dismissed my needs, our marriage, and our anniversary was like a slap in the face. I sat there for a moment, processing what he had just said to me. You're really going to leave me here alone on our anniversary while I'm 7 months pregnant because your ex-girlfriend got bad news? Sarah, please try to understand. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't even consider it. But Melissa has been through so much, and she specifically asked for me because she trusts me to help her process this. She asked for you specifically. Your ex-girlfriend asked for you specifically to abandon your pregnant wife on your anniversary, and you're going to do it. Don't make this about jealousy. This is about basic human decency. I looked at Jake, really looked at him, and realized that he had already made his decision before he even told me about the phone call. He wasn't asking for my permission or trying to find a compromise. He was informing me that he was leaving. Fine, I said, standing up from the table. Go. Sarah, don't be like this. I'll make it up to you, I promise. We can celebrate our anniversary next weekend? Next weekend. Right. I picked up my purse and jacket. I hope she's worth it, Jake. I walked over to our server, apologized for the disruption, and paid for our drinks and appetizers. Jake sat at the table looking stunned, like he couldn't believe I was actually leaving. I drove myself home and immediately started packing Jake's clothes into suitcases. If he wanted to prioritize his ex-girlfriend over his family, he could do it from somewhere else. I left the pack bags by the front door with a note that said hope she was worth it. Then I called my sister Amy and told her what had happened. She was furious and immediately offered to come stay with me. I also called my mom, who had always liked Jake but was absolutely appalled by his behavior. Jake didn't come home that night. I got a text around 11 p.m. saying he had decided to drive to Melissa's city and would be back Sunday evening. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he had done, just an update on his travel plans like I was his secretary. I spent our anniversary weekend alone, thinking about my marriage and what I wanted for my child. By Sunday, I had made some decisions. Update 1. Jake came home Sunday evening expecting to find me waiting to discuss what had happened. Instead, he found his bags packed in a very different version of his wife than the one he left on Friday night. He walked in and saw the suitcases immediately. Sarah, what is this? Your things. You can pick them up whenever it's convenient. Are you kicking me out? Over this? Sarah, Melissa is really sick. The cancer has spread and her prognosis isn't good. I'm sorry to hear that. But your response to her medical crisis was to abandon your pregnant wife on your anniversary. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. Jake sat down and tried to explain himself. It wasn't about choosing her over you. It was about being there for someone in crisis. Jake, you've been choosing her over me for 2 years. Friday night was just the most obvious example. That's not fair. I've been supporting both of you. When's the last time you spent an entire weekend focused on me and our relationship? When's the last time you drove 6 hours to comfort me when I was scared or overwhelmed? When's the last time you researched anything related to my pregnancy with the same intensity you researched Melissa's treatment options? Jake was quiet for a long moment. It's different. You're healthy and strong. She's vulnerable right now. I'm 32 weeks pregnant with our first child. How am I not vulnerable right now? You have me. She doesn't have anyone. Clearly I don't have you, Jake. That's the problem. We argued for another hour, but it became clear that Jake fundamentally didn't understand why his behavior was inappropriate. He kept framing it as me being jealous of a cancer patient rather than recognizing that he had been emotionally unavailable to his wife because he was so invested in his ex-girlfriend's life. I told him he needed to stay somewhere else while I figured out what I wanted to do about our marriage. He could see the baby once it's born, but I wasn't going to continue living with someone who would abandon me whenever his ex-girlfriend needed emotional support. Jake has been staying at his brother's house for the past week. He's called and texted constantly, cycling between apologies and justifications. Some of his messages acknowledge that his timing was poor, but most of them continue to defend his actions as necessary support for someone going through a medical crisis. The most telling conversation happened on Wednesday when he called to ask if I would consider couples therapy. "I think we need help communicating about this situation," he said. "Maybe a therapist can help you understand why my support for Melissa is important." Jake, do you hear yourself? You want a therapist to convince me to be okay with you prioritizing your ex-girlfriend over your family. It's not about prioritizing. It's about having compassion for someone who's dying. And what about having compassion for your wife who's growing your child and trying to prepare for major life changes while dealing with an emotionally absent husband? "You're not dying, Sarah." There it was again. The same dismissive response he gave me at the restaurant. As long as I'm not actively dying, my needs don't matter as much as Melissa's. I've been talking to a lawyer about my options. I'm not ready to file for divorce yet, but I want to understand what my rights are regarding custody and financial support. The lawyer was pretty clear that Jake's pattern of prioritizing his ex-girlfriend over his family would not look good in any potential custody proceedings. My family has been incredibly supportive. My parents are livid about Jake's behavior and have offered to help with anything I need. Amy has been staying with me most nights, and she's planning to be here when the baby comes in case Jake is too busy with Melissa to attend the birth. The hardest part is imagining explaining this situation to our child someday. How do you tell your kid that their father abandoned their mother during pregnancy because his ex-girlfriend got sick? How do you explain that daddy's love comes with conditions and competing priorities? I'm due in about 6 weeks, and I honestly don't know if Jake will be present for the birth or if he'll be providing emotional support to Melissa during another medical crisis. The fact that I have to wonder about that tells me everything I need to know about my marriage. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since Jake moved out, and the situation has somehow gotten even worse. Last Friday, I had my 34-week appointment and everything looked good with the baby. When I got home, I found Jake waiting in my driveway. He looked terrible, like he hadn't been sleeping or eating properly. He said he needed to talk to me about something important, and I reluctantly agreed to let him inside. "Sarah, I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that's happened. I know my timing was bad on our anniversary, and I understand why you were upset. I waited for the but that I knew was coming. But I need you to understand that Melissa is probably going to die in the next few months. The doctors have given her a very poor prognosis, and she's asked me to be her medical power of attorney because her family lives across the country." I stared at him. "She asked you to be her medical power of attorney?" "Yes. She trusts me to make decisions that align with her wishes, and she doesn't have anyone else who understands her situation as well as I do." "Jake, you're married to someone else. You're about to become a father. How is this appropriate?" "It's not about our romantic history. It's about being there for someone who needs help making end-of-life decisions. End-of-life decisions that will require you to be intimately involved in every aspect of her medical care and personal affairs while your wife is giving birth to your first child. I know the timing is difficult, but I can't abandon her now." That's when I realized that Jake genuinely doesn't see anything wrong with what he's doing. In his mind, he's being a good person by supporting someone through a medical crisis. He can't or won't acknowledge that his version of support involves prioritizing another woman over his family. "Jake, I need you to choose. Either you're committed to this marriage and this family, or you're committed to managing Melissa's end-of-life care. You can't do both. That's not fair. You're asking me to choose between my wife and someone who's dying. I'm asking you to choose between being a husband and father or being Melissa's caregiver. Those are two different roles, and you can't do both effectively." Jake got angry then, saying I was being selfish and unreasonable. He said that once Melissa dies, this will all be over and we can focus on our family. He asked me to just get through the next few months so he can fulfill his obligations to her. Get through the next few months. Like my pregnancy, labor, delivery, and adjustment to motherhood are just inconvenient obstacles to his real priority. I told him to leave, and he hasn't been back since. But the story gets worse. Yesterday, I got a call from Jake's mom, Linda, who I've always had a good relationship with. She was calling to check on me and the baby, but she also wanted to give me some information about what's been happening with Jake and Melissa. Apparently, Jake has been staying at Melissa's apartment for the past week to help with her daily care. Linda found this out because Jake's brother mentioned it casually, thinking she already knew. Linda was horrified and confronted Jake about the appropriateness of a married man living with his ex-girlfriend. Jake's response to his mother was that Melissa needed round-the-clock support and he was the only person available to provide it. He told Linda that I was being unsupportive during a difficult time and that he hoped I would come to my senses once I understood how serious Melissa's condition was. Linda told Jake that his behavior was completely inappropriate and that he was destroying his marriage. Jake apparently said that I would get over it once Melissa dies and he can focus on our family again. The casual way he talked about our marriage surviving until Melissa dies was what finally convinced Linda that her son has completely lost perspective. She told him that if he continues down this path, he'll lose his wife and child, and that Melissa's illness doesn't justify abandoning his family. Jake's response was to stop talking to his mother. Linda apologized to me repeatedly during our phone call. She said she's ashamed of Jake's behavior and wants me to know that she'll support whatever decisions I make about the marriage. She also offered to be present for the baby's birth if Jake isn't available. The fact that my mother-in-law is offering to fill in for her own son at his child's birth because he might be too busy caring for his ex-girlfriend is just surreal. I've made the decision to file for divorce. My lawyer says we can start the process now and finalize it after the baby is born. Jake will have visitation rights, but given his current priorities, I'm not sure how much he'll actually want to be involved in parenting. The saddest part is that Jake is going to miss the birth of his first child because he's chosen to be Melissa's primary caregiver instead of his wife's partner. He's going to look back on this time and realize he sacrificed his family for someone who would have survived her illness with or without his round-the-clock support. I'm 36 weeks pregnant now and feeling more at peace with my decision every day. My baby and I deserve someone who will prioritize our family when it matters most. Jake has shown me repeatedly that we're not his priority, and I'm done pretending that's acceptable. Amy is going to be my birth partner, and my parents will be there for support. I'm surrounding myself with people who actually show up when I need them, rather than waiting for someone who's always going to have a more important crisis to manage. Jake made his choice. Now I'm making mine.